All right, photography students, what we're going to look at today is how to use Photoshop to enhance your images, to make your own artwork beyond just the taking of the picture. And this is just an example of something that you can do. This is something that I did. So I'm going to show you the process to do something like this and some other tricks that Photoshop has up its sleeve. So I need to start a new project. So I'm going to go ahead and save my work and show you how to do your own projects. So you will need to open up Photoshop to begin with. So if it's not on your desktop, you will just need to go to your Launchpad and find it. You will want to create new. And you can just do the default Photoshop size. So this one is 7 by 5 inches and its resolution is 300 pixels per inch. And what you'll want to do is find the images that you want to find or that you're going to want to enhance in Photoshop. They should be in your photography folder. I know you have a lot to choose from, so you're just going to have to decide. I think it's 3 that I have you doing for this assignment. So I'll go ahead and choose the orchid plant that I did before to show you kind of how I did that. So once you have your image, you just open up your folder and you drag it straight into Photoshop. And then you have to tell the computer to accept it. So you either hit that check mark or just enter on your keyboard. And right now, essentially this image is like a screenshot, so there's not a lot you can do to it. But what we need to do is to have the computer convert every single section into a pixel, and that's called rasterizing, so that the computer can actually manipulate it. And you'll know if your image is rasterized or not because over here it'll put your image onto its own layer. So we have the background layer, which is standard, and then every time you add something in to Photoshop, it adds it as its own layer. So I didn't name my layer. This is just the generic name that came with it. And right here, this little piece of paper with the rectangle, the circle, and the triangle, if you see that image, that tells you that the computer has not rasterized it. It's just a thumbnail at this point. So you need to do a right click on your mouse on the name of that layer. Scroll down till you see rasterize. And now that that is gone, we no longer have just a thumbnail. We have a converted object that we can manipulate. So you notice that the background is larger than my image. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is get rid of this background, and that's by cropping it. So over here are all of your tools that you have available for, or the standard tools, because there's a lot. These are the standard tools available for Photoshop. And this one right here is your crop tool. In the shortcut command, when you hover over it, it shows you that it is C. So you can either hit the C key on your keyboard or just click on that to activate that tool. And it gives you guidelines when it comes up. So what you can do is adjust those. Notice that Photoshop tries to follow the rule of thirds because of photography and because of the importance of having things line up with that rule of thirds. So it does give you those guides there so you can adjust your image. So if you took a picture and you didn't get it in that rule of thirds and you would like to, then you can use your crop tool to adjust that. That looks good to me. So once you have it, you have to tell the computer to accept it. So you either hit your check mark box up here or just hit enter, and you see that it got rid of all that extra stuff I didn't need. So once you are done cropping, you have to be careful because you still have your crop tool activated. So if you click anywhere on your artboard, it will try to crop it again. So you want to just come over here, the move tool is the best one to get as a standard, won't move things or won't mess things up. So that is shortcut command of V if you want to get that, and it just allows you to move your image. The background is still there. You're not going to move the background, it's locked at this point. So now what I want to do is do some of those adjustments that I showed you. And one of the first things that I did was I selected the pink coloring of the flowers. And there are two good ways that you can do this. You can come over here to your selection tool, your quick selection tool. And right now you see that there's the circle with the no. I can't do anything because I don't have my image selected, my layer. So you have to come over here and select your layer. Once it's highlighted, that means that the computer can actually work on it. And there's my selection tools now activated. Here is an area where you can adjust the size of the pixels that it's going to grab. You can adjust the spacing of it, the hardness. I haven't really messed with these that much because I haven't had the need to. I just changed the size for how many pixels it's going to pick up. And all I'm going to do is start grabbing the pink. I want those selected because those are what I'm going to alter first. So I'm just clicking and it's going to grab those pixels. And notice that it got some pixels that I don't want it to get. So I'm going to zoom in, and that's Command plus. I'm going to move my artboard just a little bit. And now you notice that with my quick selection tool, there's a plus sign inside of there. That means to add for pixels. So as soon as I click, it'll add more pixels. If you hold down the Alt key or Option key, which is right next to your command, it changes it to minus. And I'm going to click on there to tell the computer that no, I do not want those pixels. So if there's anything that you don't want selected, you're going to hold down minus, or you could just come over here on the toolboard and just change it to minus. But it's much easier just to hold down Alt. So when you have the pixels selected that you want, I'm going to zoom back out, and that's Command minus if you want to zoom out. Then what I want to do is make some changes to my flower petals. But before I do that, I want to show you another way that you can do the selection. If you have something that is very vibrant, a specific color that you want to pick out, there is an easier way than just going in and selecting with your quick selection tool. So I'm going to show you that. First, I got to get rid of my marching ants. That's what these things are called that go around. They look like a bunch of ants just marching around. So Command D, as in dog, will get rid of your marching ants. And I'm going to come up here to my Select option, and I'm going to select a color range. So if I pick on these colors with my eyedropper tool, you notice that it shows up over here. So I'm going to add click this button here, which is Add, and notice as I keep clicking on my image of the colors I want, it makes it white over here, so it's going to select just those colors. You can also select over here if you say, hey, I want that, choose that, and it adds it. You can change the amount with your fuzziness. So once I hit OK, now you see that I have just those pink. You can come in here and clean up a little bit if you see some spots that did not get selected that you want selected. Just have the computer add that to your selection. Did you notice it did a little finer job? It didn't get the stems where I wasn't able to do that before. I mean, I could. I'd have to really zoom in and do it one pixel at a time, but that's time consuming. All right, so now that I have just my flowers selected, I'm going to make a copy of that part so that I can manipulate it, and that is Command J. And you see that I made a copy of just the flower parts. So if I turn off that section, you can see what I actually made a copy of. So I'm going to bring that back up, and this is where I'm going to be doing my work, is on this layer here. So if I select all of my stuff, I'm just going to grab a big selection because there's nothing it can grab over on this layer because I'm only working on this layer. And the only thing that's visible or accessible is this part here. So I'm going to bring that back up. So what I want to do now is come up here to Image, and you can do adjustments of your image in here. You can control how bright it is or the contrast amount, the level for the coloring. You can see I can make it much darker. Looks almost red. Can make it much lighter. So this is something you can do to adjust your image. You can do the entire image if you want. You can also adjust on the curves. It's the highlighting factor. So I can adjust exactly where I want more highlights or less highlights. So this is a cool option that you can do. You can also adjust the exposure amount. So if your lighting wasn't right, it's overexposed or underexposed. Notice it's only altering my selection because I'm not having it work on the entire image. And so much you can do. There's also how vibrant it is. So if you want those colors to stand out a little bit more or less, you can do that. And you've got hue and saturation. So that is the color amount, like how much red, how much blue. So you can come in and do adjustments on that. So if I don't like that purple orchid color, maybe I want a blue. A deeper blue, lighter blue, looks more purplish. So you can change your colors that way. If it's not balanced correctly with the amount of yellows, magenta, you got all of this stuff that you can do to fine tune it. And then you could change it to black and white if you want. And you can adjust that as well. You can have it do it automatically. You can do a filter on it. So if you want it to be a warmer color, cooler color, you can add that filter to it. Let's see what else. There are so many things that you can do to it. You can match colors. You can add some shadows and highlighting. You can add other filters to it. I'm going to show you this on another thing that you can do, but if you want to sharpen sections of it. All right, now let me show you another thing you can do. So I showed you one way you can change the colors through all the adjustments over here. You could also use your paint bucket tool to change colors. So if I want to have sections, let's say I do want to add some of this burgundy color in there. So now I'm going to choose that's my color that I want. I'm going to go to my paint bucket tool. And right now it's at 34%. If I put it up to 100%, that means it's going to fill that all the way where I click. So that's going to be pretty intense. But if I lower the opacity, then you will still be able to get some light dark coloring going on without changing some of the aspects of the flower. So this gives you a little bit more control of coloring or changing the colors of your objects. And you can paint on it. So maybe I wanted just to use the size. I can change the size. You can change your brush, like what kind of style the brush is. Changing there. I don't want to change my tools. There it is. So you can choose what kind of brush style you want. can get like a splotchy, you can do some speckles. And if I just go in there, and it just takes that color. If the opacity is too much, maybe I just want it a little lighter. And put that in there. So you can see how that kind of makes it look almost aged, like the flower's aged. The more you click, the more it'll put it on there. I'm doing Command Z to step back to take away what I had done. There we go. So that's just something you can do. If you will need to pick up a color to match it, use your eyedropper tool. And I picked up that color. Notice that it changed it in my color block over here. There is a pen tool that you can draw shapes on it. You can blur aspects. So if something's just a little too sharp and you want it to smooth out a little bit, you can do that. It's not very intense right now. My strength's not very strong. So you can play around with these and see what it does. And there's a drop down button, so if you do a right click on there, so you can now choose the sharpen tool or smudge tool. This is an eraser. It'll actually erase pixels, so if you use that, be careful, because once you erase a pixel, you can't manipulate it because it's not there anymore. This is a cool tool right here. It's a spot healing tool. So if something you get a spot too much that you don't want, it goes in and the computer tries to figure out what it should be to heal it. So if there's like, somebody had something on their forehead, like a zit, and you wanted it to be removed, you would use the spot healer tool for that, which is pretty cool. That's why you don't ever trust images that are in magazines or commercials, because they've all been photoshopped. All right, I think those are the basics of what you need for the tools. Now let me show you something else that you can do, or how I got that glow effect. So once I have my selection here, if you do a right click on that name, come up here to blending options, and these are things that you can do. You can just do a color overlay, so it puts a color all the way over it. There's different modes you can do. You can do a dissolve. Normal is just going to be a flat color. You can increase it with multiply. That actually looks pretty cool. You can lighten it. Screen was what I had originally. You can do a soft light. You can change the color, so you click on that. If I want a purple color, you can see how it's changing it as I adjust. Maybe a blue. So you can choose what your color overlay is. I don't want an overlay. What I had done is I put a glow on it. So you click on outer glow, and you can change how you want your glow to be. Screen is probably the best on the glow. You can change the color. So if I want a purplish color, and if I want it less of a glow, then I choose my size and the spread amount, so how far. I can choose the opacity and increase or decrease how much of it is there. I can add some noise, which are little speckles to it. So there's all these cool controls that you have with Photoshop. You can put an inner shadow. I haven't tried satin before. Ooh, that looks really cool. I like that. So maybe I want it to be a little bit lighter. That gray. You can do a gradient overlay if you want. So it gives that silver effect, and you can choose the gradient, change what it is. A pattern, you can put a pattern on it. You can add a drop shadow to it, and you can change the contour, the opacity, making it bigger, adding more of a shadow to it. So there's so many cool things that you can do. So you guys are going to end up having way too much fun with this and probably won't get your work done. So you need to make sure that you're managing your time, figuring out what you want to get done, and then getting it done. All right, so the other thing that I did was I made this whole background black. So I have to get back to this image here. I'm going to turn that off. So that was the original. And this time I'm going to select, I'm going to make it easier. Let's do select color range because I already had all of that selected. And I'm going to hit OK so it selects it again. But this time, and I'll go ahead and pick those pixels that the computer missed. This time I want it to select everything but this. So I'm going to come up here and do select inverse. Inverse means opposite. So now it's selecting everything but the pink of the flowers. And I'm going to do I'm going to paint it. I could do a color overlay, but I think I'm going to paint it. So I'm going to do a black and get my paint bucket tool. And I want the opacity high. I'm going to cover it up, but I want to be able to see like the stem and everything. So if it's 100%, I won't see the stem. So I'm going to start coloring over in here. The more you click, the more paint it puts, so the thicker and darker it will be. There we go. Lower that opacity a little bit more for this section. So I want to be able to see that stem. And I don't really want this thing here. I should have used my spot healing tool to go in there and fix that before. There we go. And now I've got that black background. So that's just something that you can do for your image. And then of course you'll want to save your work. So you'll go File, Save As, and it'll end in PSD. That's Photoshop document. So I'm going to just call this Orchid and hit Save. Make sure it goes to your desktop. You can put it in your photography folder. And hit Save. That's not the right one that I want, but that's okay. And then in order for you to turn this into Canvas, I want you to convert this to a different format. So we're going to go File, Export, and we're going to do a PNG, which is just a photo formatting, which is good for us to use. And I'll name it again. You can send it to your desktop. And I'll put it in photography, hit save. And so now I will have a PNG, which is an easier file format to save my work in. There it is right there. All right, so let me show you something else that you can do, which is really cool. So I'm going to do another one, so File, New, and just a basic document. And I'm going to this time put in this image here, so drag that from my file folder. Remember to tell the computer to accept it and to rasterize it. If you don't rasterize it, you won't be able to do anything. So if you're working on it, you're like, hey, it won't do anything, Mrs. Co. It's probably because you forgot to rasterize it. All right, so now I'm going to crop it. Get these little there. That looks good enough. Zoom in a little bit. So what I wanted to show you is some of the effects that you can do. So I'm going to come up here to Filter, and Liquify is really cool. So it zooms in for you, but watch what this does. So if I swirl this, makes those colors all blend together. This is like so super cool. So I'm just going through with my mouse and blending all of this stuff. Isn't that neat? Just mixes all those colors up. It's like paint. You can also come up here and you can blur things. You try all these different kinds of blurs. You can change the radius of how much of a blur you have. Let's see what that does to it. Looks like you just didn't focus it, doesn't it? You do Command Z to go back. Pixelating's cool. So you can make it look very pixelated. You can come up here and add noise to it. So if you want like a old-timey effect to it, you can add some noise. It's a little crazy. I don't want too much. And noise is not like sound. In photography, noise is all this extra distortion that gets into your pictures. Ooh, I've not tried this. What will that do? I have no idea what this is going to do. No, I don't want a tree. Looks like you can just add some tree stuff to it. What does it do? What does it do? It adds a tree to your picture. Woohoo! I don't think I want a tree on my picture, so I'm going to get rid of my tree. Let's see what else. You can, stylizing is cool. Look at this. Once if I change it to oil paint, it makes it look like it was painted. You can do, I haven't done solarize. Let's try tiles. What will tiles do? Number of tiles, 10. Okay, let's see what it does. Oh, that's so cool. So you guys can play around with this, see what it can do. But again, don't get sucked into spending all of your time. I do want to show you distort. But don't spend all of your time in here because look at all this cool stuff. You see, I love Photoshop. It's so awesome. Look at that. So I want you guys to have fun with this too. Just keep note of your time. Get me 3 pictures. I think that's what I put in Canvas. Let me double check because I want to make sure it's right before I tell you otherwise what we're doing. Of course, that's the wrong one. Sorry guys. I do have it in here. I think I just put it under the 6th grade one. I will fix it for the rest of you guys. No, apparently I don't have it in here. Okay, I'm just going to tell you then. 3. We will do 3 pictures. And then you're going to do some Photoshop work with it. And then tell me what you learned, what you tried out, what you try to create. You could just be enhancing your regular images, or you could just have some fun with it and see what cool stuff that you can do. All right, can't wait to see what you guys come up with.